That's it for our news roundup. It's time now to take a look at the French newspapers with Elena Casas. Hello again, Elena. So we were just mentioning there in the bulletin that story about Dominique Strauss-Kahn, the latest allegations. What do the papers make of that then? Some of them are actually in L'Express.
Yes, this all comes from this weekly L'Express. So you talk about the astounding debauchery of Dominique Strauss-Kahn, as they call it on the front page. If we have a look inside, they've got pages and pages of coverage devoted to whatever he got up to when he was head of the IMF. And what's really astounding, Claire, is how he managed to do such a demanding full-time job when apparently he had so many extracurricular interests. The magazine talks about him meeting prostitutes in the background of major economic summits all over the world. It talks about them being flown to Washington to meet him when he was head of the IMF. And it talks about the relationships between a French political activist and a CEO who allegedly provided those prostitutes. Apparently, Strauss-Kahn may have promised them political influence in exchange, and also introduced them to several other senior socialists. So that makes the Socialist Party look pretty bad. And it also makes it more and more likely he could be facing criminal charges for corruption over this.
Well, let's hope that our current leaders are concentrating a little bit more on the job. What else is making the front pages?
Well, over at Libération, we've got Sarkozy and the millions of thieves. Now, this is from a speech he gave yesterday in Bordeaux, which was about benefit cheats. He reckons there's millions of them who are stealing from the French state, as he put it, and they're partly responsible even for France's huge deficit. But in Libération, if we have a look at their editorial, they say this is a clever tactic to try and win over parts of the working class, who the government reckons are turning to the Front National, and they reckon they can win them back by attacking benefit cheats. They think the crisis is making people more right-wing, but Libération thinks politicians should be concentrating on how much those who are the poorest in society already are suffering from the current crisis and how the bankers are getting away with it.
And are there really millions of benefit cheats? Some papers think not.
Well, L'Humanité, the communist paper, basically reckons the president has made them up. On their front page here, they've got the scan of the 5 lies of Sarkozy. What are these lies? Well, on the inside, they say that not only do these benefit cheats not exist in such numbers, but the president's statistic about the number of fake sick days that French people are taking isn't true either. Apparently, they take one of the smallest number in the whole of Europe. And they also say that if businesses paid the right social security contributions for all of the people who they're employing in the black without the correct papers, then they would be able to fill in the social security deficit without having to charge the workers any more money.
And they're not the only ones who think the famously generous French welfare system is under threat.
No, here on the front of the Catholic paper La Croix, they're asking their readers, how can we save the French social model? They point out that there is a €13 billion annual deficit in French social security, and something has to be done to fill in this gap. They talk about different strategies. They say unions want employers to pay more contributions for their employees, and they also want some tax breaks that exist at the moment for employers to be filled in. Whereas, on the other hand, in that article, they talk about how the right-wing they say that would send French jobs abroad, encourage firms to go abroad, and instead they want higher VAT, but someone's got to pay for it somehow.
And Le Monde isn't too impressed with Sarkozy's management of the economy either.
No, if we have a look at the cartoon on their front page, they've got Sarkozy sailing the good ship France directly into an iceberg made up of toppling stock market prices and credit ratings. He's flying a flag on that ship with a euro on it and saying, this plan will work, but all the people in the back of the ship are screaming, so Le Monde doesn't look like they're too impressed with his economic strategy so far.
Not much positivity around at the moment, is there? Now, that speech by Nicolas Sarkozy in Bordeaux wasn't the only big political announcement yesterday, was it?
No, remember I told you yesterday that the Socialists and the Greens were having trouble coming to an electoral agreement for this coming election next year. They did have until Saturday to come up with a plan, but something was announced yesterday. It's not a very significant plan, to be honest. They've just agreed that if the left come to power, they will work together. And the Socialists have agreed that in exchange for that, they'll scrap half of France's nuclear power plants. That's not gone down well with the right-wing press. So here in Le Figaro, they're not happy. The headline says the Socialist Party sacrifices half of France's nuclear energy. And their editorial says that being dedicated to nuclear energy for the last 40 years is something France should be proud of. And they'd be stupid to scrap it. Lots of people would lose their jobs, and also it would be bad for France's independence because it would make them more reliant on foreign oil from countries like Russia and the Middle East that can't necessarily be relied on.
Okay, thanks very much for that look at the French newspapers, Elena Casas.